Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Bryans, and welcome to the CFR training presentation. Today, the presentation will include getting started, CFRS web, e-signing, and core reporting. Tomorrow's presentation will include the utilities menu, general and agency-specific changes, highlights, supplementals, the SUP1 schedule, and claims reporting. Today's New York State representatives will be as follows. Representing Oasis, Paul Green, Paul Sutton, and Lisa Vickery. Representing OMH, Dennis Kristancy, Josh Baker, Ann Hoffman, Naki Gibbs, and Caitlin Kilmartin. Representing OPWDD, Kenneth Glenmeyer and Emily Bryans. Representing SED, Catherine Cochran, Evelyn Turnbell, and Ian Hobbs. Representing DOH, Jeffrey Nickerson, Nicole Malucci, and Nicole Gerber. During today's webinar, please feel free to submit any questions through the Q&A function on the lower right corner of your screen, the three little dots. Questions will not be answered today, but the questions along with the answers will be posted at the following link on the screen on the OMH website. You will also be able to find previously posted CFR FAQs posted here. It will be announced at a later date when the new CFR FAQs will be posted. If you are having trouble finding the Q&A, please try logging into the webinar again through the app, not the browser. There was a recent update for WebEx, and we have found if an attendee joins the webinar through the browser, there is no Q&A function. We apologize for the inconvenience. If you still cannot find the Q&A, then please forward any of your questions to the Oasis CFR mailbox. The email address will be listed on the next slide. Your questions will be answered within a few weeks. Also, this presentation will be recorded and posted to YouTube. So if you have any WebEx issues, you will be able to watch the webinar at a later date, and the links will be emailed to you once posted. If you continue to have any audio or viewing issues during this webinar, then please try logging out and logging back in. Here on this slide, please find each state agency's contact information in case you have any state agency specific questions. Since most state agencies are working hybrid schedules, email is the preferred method of contact. Questions applicable to specific state agencies should be directed to that agency. If your Q&A is not working, please use the Oasis mailbox listed here to send your questions during the training. On this slide are the claims contact information for Oasis, OMH, and OPWDD. Any questions regarding claims should be directed here. The goals of today's presentation are to give providers a general understanding of the CFR manual and CFRS web, to help providers become more comfortable with the CFR core reports, and to inform them of important policies, principles, and rules regarding the CFR. And now we will get started on today's topics.
Good morning. My name is Nicole Gerber, and I will be presenting the Getting Started portion of the presentation. The CFR manual contains 9 general overview sections, a section for each core, claiming, and supplemental schedules. It includes numerous appendices containing detailed information and can be found online at the link below. And we recommend to read and review the first 9 sections of the CFR manual before beginning work on the CFR. The CFR manual is available online in 2 sections, the manual and the appendices. PDF files of the manual, appendix, and forms will be available for download. The SCD webpage here is where manuals, extension requests, and transmittal letters can be found. Manuals are currently available going back several reporting periods. Please consider reviewing the transmittal letter, which contains all changes made to the CFR manual. Training information is also available at the OMH and SCD websites. Recorded webinars of CFR training presentations are available on the OPWDD YouTube page. Additional information will be discussed later in the presentation. The CFR is used as a year-end cost report that documents service provider expenses and revenues on one consolidated report and is shared by the 5 New York State agencies. Cost report information is used for rate and fee setting, cost of living increases, financial analysis and policy development by the New York State agencies, the legislature, and the governor's office. A year-end state aid claiming document that is the basis of payment of your final claim for the CFR period. The cost report, also referred to as the CFR Core Schedules, consists of schedules CFR 1 through CFR 6 and DMH 1. The state aid claiming schedules are schedules DMH 2 and DMH 3. These schedules are the basis of your state aid and/or local contract payment. Methods of accounting. Full accrual accounting must be used when reporting fiscal information on schedules CFR 1 through CFR 6 and DMH 1. Schedules DMH 2 and DMH 3 may be completed on an accrual, modified accrual, or cash basis. Filers of many abbreviated CFRs may complete all required schedules on accrual, modified accrual, or the cash basis of accounting. Accrual accounting shows the goal of accrual accounting is to account in the periods in which they occur, the effects of transactions and other events and circumstances on an entity to the extent that those financial effects are recognizable and measurable. Revenue is recognized and recorded when earned, regardless of when payment is received. Expenses are recognized and recorded as they are incurred instead of when they are paid. Units of service are accounted when provided, and salary expense or personal services is reported in the period incurred, not in the period the paycheck was issued. Please note that the CFR may not match your quarterly payroll reports. There are 4 types of CFR submissions: full abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and mini abbreviated. The type of CFR a service provider must complete depends on the type of programs operated and the amount and type of funding received from the CFR state agencies. Please review the submission matrices on Section 2 of the CFR manual to determine the type of CFR submission required. When a service provider is funded by more than one New York State agency, the most stringent reporting requirements apply for all required CFR filings. For example, this means if OASIS requires a mini abbreviated CFR, but DOH requires a full CFR, your agency would be required to file a full CFR. Shown here, we have Section 2 of the CFR manual, which contains 5 matrices for determining the correct CFR submission type for your agency. You would select the applicable matrix and answer a series of yes or no questions to determine the correct CFR submission type to prepare. For purposes of determining submission requirements, Medicaid managed care is considered to be Medicaid. This section also contains notes relating to New York State agency-specific reporting requirements and exceptions. The submission matrices change often and should be reviewed yearly. Primary CFR reporting periods. CFR reporting periods are generally based on the geographic location of a service provider's corporate headquarters. This training covers the July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2026 fiscal year reporting period. All programs operated during this time period should be reported on the CFR. If your agency has a contract for one or more programs funded on a period different than your agency's standard CFR reporting period, An additional mini abbreviated CFR may be required for the non-standard filing period. This is also known as a dual filer. The additional CFR will use the reporting period specified by the contract as per New York Code's Rules and Regulations, NYCRR. The most common off-cycle contracts are for Special Legislative Grants, or SLG, also known as member items. For example, a service provider that has its corporate headquarters in Manhattan and operates programs in both Manhattan and Westchester County must submit their primary CFR on the standard reporting period of July 1st through June 30th. This service provider would complete the CFR detailing expenses and revenues for all programs in operation during that time period, including the Westchester County programs. Further, they must also submit a secondary mini abbreviated CFR on the January 1st through December 31st reporting period for the programs funded by Westchester County only. Providers are directed to the additional reporting requirements section on pages 3.1 through 3.2 of the CFR manual. The due dates are as follows. January to December filers for OMH and SED should submit a full abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFR by May 1st. For OASIS, OPWDD, and DOH, this would be due June 1st. For fiscal year filers that are filing for OMH and SED, the due date would be November 1st. For OASIS, OPWDD, and DOH, that date would be December 1st. The link to the CFR pre-approved 30-day extension request for OMH and SED can be found on the New York State Education Department rate setting unit at the link below. State agencies will not be responsible for any loss of state aid resulting from non-compliance with the required deadlines or late amendments. Please note that if the due date falls on a weekend or holiday, the deadline is not extended until the next business day. For example, if the due date of November 1st falls on a Sunday, the deadline is not extended until the following business day. November 1st is still considered the due date. Now we will talk about penalties for late submission. To ensure compliance in submitting accurate CFRs and their required supporting documents, each New York State agency can impose sanctions or penalties on the provider. The imposition of sanctions or penalties may include, but is not limited to, withholding of advanced payments and ultimately termination of state aid, suspension, limitation, or revocation of the operating certificate, notification of noncompliance to DOH for Medicaid providers, and more will be discussed in the agency-specific section of the presentation. For county and New York City submission requirements for final claims, if your agency is funded through an LGU contract, check with the county/New York City for their specific requirements regarding CFR and final claim submissions. LGUs may require submission due date earlier than the New York State agency prescribed due date. New York State agency CFR requirements are the minimal requirements regarding CFR submissions. LGU requirements can be stricter, but cannot be more lenient. CFRs are prepared and submitted using CFRS Web, found at the following link for submission requirements. In addition to the submission of the CFR, the agency financial statements and parent agency allocation supporting documentation should be submitted through CFRS Web. Instructions on the submission of certification schedules through CFRS Web will be discussed later in the presentation. Please do not mail paper copies of the CFR core schedules, CFR 1 through DMH 1, to the New York State Agency's CFR units in Albany. Also, an important note to remember, CFRS Web must be used for the electronic signing of certification schedules beginning with the July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025 reporting period and forward. The New York State agencies will not accept any other form of certification submission if the certification can be electronically signed. The details of this process of electronically signing certifications will be discussed later in the presentation. Now we will discuss revised CFRs and certification schedules. When a revised CFR is submitted, a provider is required to electronically sign, where applicable, revised certification schedules complete with the new DCN number as follows. For OASIS, a new CFR-I, CFR-II, II-A compliance review, CFR-III, and CFR-IV are required. Please note, subsequent to a CFR-II, II-A, or CR being received, OASIS will accept an attestation reporting minor changes in lieu of additional CFR-II-A or CRs. For SED and OPWDD, a new CFR-I and CFR-II, II-A is required. For OMH and DOH, a new CFR-I is required. Please note for OPWDD, a new certified CFR-I and CFR-II, II-A, if required with original CFR submission, is required. Only CPA certified CFRs will be utilized for calculation of OPWDD reimbursement levels or any other initiative that utilizes the CFR for calculation of funding or reimbursement. Providers may submit revised CFRs and/or certification schedules in CFRS Web that have not been certified in compliance with other agencies' requirements. However, OPWDD's CFR unit will not accept them without certification. If e-signing is not available for a specific certification schedule, a wet signed copy will need to be submitted. Now we will talk about financial statements. Consolidated financial statements, including all affiliates, must be submitted electronically as PDF files through CFRS Web. In addition, financial statements reflecting information on the provider as a standalone entity should be uploaded if available. Providers are required to have a single audit based on the uniform guidance and the compliance supplement, must upload a copy of the audit report to the funding New York State agency via CFRS Web. More information on the federal audit requirements can be found at the link below. Please note that financial statements should only be uploaded one time for a fiscal reporting period unless there are changes. Please do not upload draft financial statements. Financial statements are not required for many abbreviated CFRs, and OPWDD will not accept paper copies of financial statements. The prior period financial statements can also be uploaded through CFRS Web. It is preferred that CPA audited financial statements correspond to the CFR reporting period. However, if your agency's corporate fiscal year is different than the CFR reporting period, submit the financial statements with an end cycle date that falls within the CFR reporting period. It is recommended that the audited and certified financial statements include the prior year's data in the presentations of the balance sheet and income statement or comparably labeled schedule. And here are some tips on financial record keeping. Program payroll and fringe benefits should be reconciled to the general ledger on a monthly or quarterly basis. Salary allocations between different programs and/or job functions should be carefully monitored. Expenses and revenues should be monitored on a regular basis compared against approved budgets. Internal financial reporting systems should be structured to capture the cost categories included in the CFR. Units of service provided by programs should be tracked on a regular basis, and non-allowable costs should be tracked on a regular basis for easy identification when preparing the CFR. And you can find program descriptions and unit of service definitions in appendices E, F, G, H, and HH, which are also found on the SED website. And a list of some but not all non-allowable costs can be found in Appendix X. Now we will talk about what we mean by non-allowable costs. A cost must be reasonable and/or necessary for providing services in both its nature and amount. In determining the reasonableness of a given cost, consideration will be given to whether the costs incurred in rendering the services are generally recognized as ordinary and necessary for the operation of the organization and the restraints or requirements imposed by federal and state laws and regulations. Providers should refer to Appendix X of the CFR manual for a list of some but not all non-allowable costs. All non-allowable costs included as an expense on any line of the CFR schedules CFR 1, CFR 2, CFR 3, DMH 1, and DMH 2 must be reported on the adjustments/non-allowable costs line of the applicable schedules. The following are some examples of non-allowable costs that must be adjusted out of the reported costs. Costs that are not properly related to patient care and principally afford diversion, amusement, or entertainment to owners, operators, or employees. Costs related to the purchase of alcoholic beverages. Costs resulting from violations of or failure to comply with federal, state, and local government laws, rules, and regulations. Costs of training afforded staff that does not directly relate to the fulfillment of required duties. Please note that expenses which are acceptable per GAAP or IRS may or may not be reimbursable. Additionally, related party transactions. The allowable cost of a related party transaction is the lower of the related organization's/individual's actual cost or the fair market value of providing the goods or services supplied. All related party transactions, as well as entity-wide agency administration, must be disclosed and detailed on Schedule CFR 5. All excess related party transaction costs, as defined above, included as an expense on any line of any CFR schedule, must be reported on the adjustments/non-allowable costs line of the applicable CFR schedule. As for fringe benefits, fringe benefit expenses that are not reasonable and available to all employees or non-allowable and must be adjusted out of reporting costs on the applicable CFR schedule. Non-allowable fringe benefit costs include, but are not limited to, supplemental executive retirement plans or any non-qualified deferred compensation plans subject to IRC subsection 457F. And now we will move on to CFRS Web. CFRS Web is a common platform for the providers of the 5 New York State agencies that are required to submit CFRs/CBRs. All New York State agencies and their programs are to be reported on one consolidated CFR. CFRS Web requires entry of agency information and program site information. Only program codes and funding source codes valid for the CFR reporting period can be used. Most questions regarding CFRS Web can be answered by reviewing the New York State CFRS Web webpage located at Consolidated Fiscal Reporting System, newyork.gov, or the CFRS Web User Guide, which is located in the CFRS Web menu under Help. After review, if additional assistance accessing or navigating CFRS Web is required, we recommend you contact a CFR state agency representative with the below contacts. If technical assistance is required, such as the CFRS Web application is not responding, contact the New York State Office of Information Technology Services at 1-800-HELPS-NEW-YORK-STATE or 1-800-435-7697 and select option 2, or email the help desk at healthhelp@its.newyork.gov. If outside of New York State, please call 1-518-474-5554. Help desk hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. Now we will discuss security managers. User access to CFRS Web must be authorized by the service provider's security manager. The security manager at the provider agency assigns a CFRS Web role to fiscal staff involved in reviewing, preparing, or submitting CFRs/CBRs. The assigned user role can be viewed by clicking on the username at the upper right of the screen. A different set of permissions is associated with each role. If a different level of access is needed, the user should contact the security manager at the provider agency. A provider is encouraged to establish an additional security manager if so desired. For additional questions related to changing or maintaining the security manager, please contact your state agency's CFR review unit. To establish a new security manager, the agency's executive director must first log into the CNDA application at the following link. Once logged in, they will click on the Send Self-Registration Email menu item shown here. The director can either designate themselves or someone else to be the security manager. If the Send Self-Registration Email option is unselectable and grayed out, please contact your CFR representative for assistance. The designated security manager will receive the self-registration email from the following address. The user should keep an eye on their junk or spam folder in case the email ends up there. And this is an example shown of the email they'll receive. Once this email is received, the registration link should be accessed immediately as it expires within 24 hours, after which a new registration may need to be requested. If the self-registration email is not received, please contact your CFR representative for assistance. And shown here we have the AMS self-registration form. The registration form should be completed after accessing that link. If the new security manager already has an OMH user ID, they should enter it in the dropdown. Otherwise, one will be created. Upon submission of the registration form, the new security manager will receive a completion notification, shown here. A confirmation email will follow containing instructions on obtaining an RSA Secure ID token. To request the RSA Secure ID token, the user logs into the Self-Service Console at Self-Service Console Home using their OMH user ID. Upon logging in, the user will be asked to create security questions before requesting a token under the My Authenticators section. It is recommended the user choose a soft token. The user is then asked to establish a PIN number that will be used to create a passcode for authentication, as shown here. After submitting the token request, the user will receive a confirmation, also shown here. It will say, "You have successfully submitted one request." In order to activate the RSA Secure ID token, the new security manager will need to contact the help desk at 1-800-HELPS-NEW-YORK and select option 2, or email the help desk at healthhelp@its.ny.gov. Once the token is activated, the new security manager can access the Authorization Management System, or AMS, and add new users, edit access, and deactivate users that are no longer at their facility. A link to the AMS system, as well as additional guidance for both the AMS system and CNDA application, can be found at the following link. User access should be reviewed periodically to ensure that appropriate staff have the access needed and former staff are deactivated. The possible user roles are as follows. And this is in CFR SWEPs. CFR provider agency reviewer can read-only access to all the provider agency's submitted documents and work in progress. They also have access to provider reports function. The CFR provider agency preparer, in addition to the same access as the reviewer, can enter data for all submission types, can perform full calculations, can validate submission, and assign document control number. The CFR provider agency submitter, in addition to the same access as preparer, can submit CFRs and CBRs and can upload supporting documents. Providers can have the same role assigned to multiple users. For example, having multiple users designated as submitter may be useful in meeting filing deadlines. Now we will discuss signatory roles. The possible signatory roles are as follows. CFR Executive Director eSign, in addition to the same access as reviewer, can eSign CFR-I, CFR-III, and CFR-IV. The CFR LGU CFO eSign, in addition to the same access as reviewer, can eSign CFR-III. This is only applicable to governmental providers. The CFR County Director eSign can, in addition to the same access as reviewer, eSign CFR-III. The CFR CPA eSign, in addition to the same access as reviewer, can eSign CFR-II and compliance review. The executive director should be assigned both the executive director eSign roles as well as the submitter role. Please take the time to verify that staff have been assigned the appropriate roles prior to submitting the CFR to minimize difficulties in the submission process. If assistance is needed, please contact your CFR representative. Now we will discuss common access issues for CFR SWEB. If you are having trouble logging in, some helpful hints include 1. Choose the Forgot Password option at the newyork.gov login. 2. Contact your agency's security manager to confirm username. In addition, the security manager can confirm assigned user roles. And 3. Contact your state agency's CFR representative. This concludes the Getting Started portion of the presentation. I will now pass the presentation on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. This is Paul Sutton, and I'm representing the Office of Addiction Services and Supports, and we're going to be discussing the CFR Web homepage sections. First, when you first log in to the CFR Web, you'll begin at the homepage and see the announcement board. The announcement board has important information to notify providers of the latest CFR news, such as which version is currently available and which reporting period you can choose for CFR submissions, as well as when your CFR due dates are. Below the announcement board, if you scroll down on the page, are 4 individual sections or quadrants. The color of the button of each section indicates the accessibility as determined by your assigned user roles. Gold buttons are accessible and gray buttons are not. The first quadrant we will look at is to create a new submission. A user with the preparer or submitter roles can click on the gold Create a New Submission button to begin the process of creating a new submission. Once you go into this is the first thing you'll see. And if you want to create a new submission, you first need to select a submission type from the drop-down box. And then, which is either full, abbreviated, mini abbreviated, or an Article 28. Then choose the state agencies that you'll represent on your CFR. You can select all or just one, whichever your program represent. Then select the reporting cycle and the reporting period carefully, because once you advance to the next screen, the selections cannot be changed. And then answer the question, would you like to carry forward data from a prior submission, and enter a submission description if desired. Now, the submission description box is for internal use only for yourselves, and it's recommended to use that so that if you have multiple submissions you're working on, you can help identify that for yourselves. Now, with the carry forward, on the question that asked, would you like to carry forward data from a prior submission? If you selected the no response, your input will then begin on this screen at the provider agency definition section, which includes basic agency definition data, such as your name and address, what county you're in, and what ownership type are you, a not-for-profit or a governmental provider. Now, at the carry forward question, if you had chosen yes for your response, the most recent submission for each reporting period will be available to choose as a source of the carry forward. Only the most recently submitted DCN number will be available to select for each reporting period under the same parameters. And highlight the row to select your choice. Next, the option to carry forward data allows for the transfer of master data only or all data. Master data only includes agency information, program site information, and personal services data. All data includes the master data information and the numerical input. Once you choose which option you want, select Next. This is an example of a notification you may receive regarding your selections. In this example, the new submission does not include all the New York State agencies reported on the previous submission. After you make your selections and hit Next, you'll receive the Carry Forward is Complete notification, and the user will now be directed to the Provider Agency Definition section. And note that once you have transferred data over, it must be reviewed for accuracy and completeness. The prior year certified financial statement period start date and end date period do not transfer in when you carry forward. Completion of this data is necessary. Now, to complete this, you'll notice the little calendar icon next to the start and end date boxes, and you have to click on the calendar icon. Will open up your calendar. Choose the selected start date and end date for your financial periods, and then select Next Schedule to advance the program site definition. From the program site definition page, you should verify the accuracy of the program site data that you transferred in. The Edit feature, represented by a pencil icon, is used to make any necessary corrections except to the program code. The Delete feature, represented by the trash can icon, is used to remove a program from the CFR. Using the Edit feature allows changes to the details of the selected programs. However, to change the program code itself, the program must be deleted and a new program added. To create a new program, select the Add a Program button. Note that once a program code has been saved, the program code cannot be edited. As we mentioned previously, you would need to delete the program and then create a new one. For SED programs filing a calendar CFR, each new program code created will require an FF and SS index code. To do this, you'll need to add the program code twice and use FF as the index code for one program, then save it, and add another program with the same program number, but then use SS as the index code. After you enter information for a program and site, click the Save button at the bottom of the screen to save your changes. As a security precaution, after 30 minutes of inactivity, the user will be required to re-enter your login information. So say you get called away to a meeting, or if you go to lunch, after 30 minutes, the system will log you out. Now, you will not lose any of your data. It will save everything, so you're not going to lose anything, but you will be logged out and will need to re-log into CFR Web. Now, the next section we will look at here is the top right quadrant, listed as the continue submission and upload completed CFRs and CBRs. To continue working on an unsubmitted CFR, you want to click on the View in Progress button. Now, this is where if you had gone to lunch and got logged out and you come back, your started submission will now be in this section. All CFRs that are considered work in progress will be listed here. Select the desired row to continue working on a specific CFR. If the submission is available for edit, the choices will include View Submission or Edit Submission. Selecting View Submission will allow the user to view the submission, but not to change any of the data. Upon selecting the Edit Submission option, a notification will appear stating that you will become the user of record and other users will not be able to edit the document during your session. After selecting Yes to the notification, it will show the username of who the CFR is being edited by and offer the options to continue edit, stop edit, or delete submission. If you choose Continue Edit, you'll be directed back to the Provider Agency Information section. If you choose Stop Edit, the confirmation message states that your revision session has ended, and the document will now be available for revision by other users. If you choose Delete Submission, a warning will ask you to confirm this action as it cannot be undone. There is a cancel option if you do not wish to delete the CFR. If the status is DCN assigned but not yet submitted, the CFR or CBR has passed validations but has not yet been submitted. After selecting the DCN assigned but not yet submitted option, the submission will present options to either view the submission, edit the submission, or submit the submission. Selecting View Submission, as we stated before, will allow the user to view the submission but not change any data. If Edit Submission is selected, you'll now get a warning indicating that the DCN number will be removed and that the submission will not be available for edit by other users. Once you re-edit the submission, the CFR must pass final validations again to receive a new DCN number. To submit the CFR, select the Submit Submission button. Note this is also available from the Utilities option in the menu, which we explain later. And note that only users that have the CFR Provider Agency Submitter role will have this option to upload a CFR or any supporting documents. Once you have clicked on the Submit Submission option, you will receive a confirmation that the submission was successful. A submission dashboard button will appear. Selecting the submission dashboard button will return you to the review or revise CFRs and upload documents section of the homepage, also known as the submission dashboard. This is where all the submitted CFRs are stored. Now, to work on a CFR that has already been submitted, from the home screen, select the Review or Revise and Upload Documents section. This is the lower left quadrant now of the four. This section includes all previously submitted CFRs and is also used for the uploading of financial statements and e-signing of supporting documentation. All previously uploaded CFRs and CBRs since 2012 are available and sorted by reporting period, DCN number, submission type, state agencies, and submitted date. Select from the drop-down the desired category of document type, CFR only, budget only, or CFR and budget. You should expand and collapse the reporting period by clicking on the arrow to the left of the row. Choose the desired CFR or CBR by clicking on that row. The search box is an alternative method to filter by column headers, DCN number, submission type, state agencies, and submitted date. After selecting a CFR or CBR, the options to view submission or revive submission become available. If you select to view the submission, you will not be able to edit. If you select Revise Submission, a message will appear stating that a copy of the CFR will be created and the CFR in progress will not be available for edit for any other users until you log off by selecting the Stop Edit button or after 30 minutes of inactivity. By selecting Yes to the notification, a newly created copy will be available for editing and will not contain a DCN number. Note, use of the submission description box will help to identify the purpose of the revised submission. Much like when we were creating a new submission, this description box is for internal use only for yourselves, and can be very valuable if you have multiple revisions or CFRs you're working on. In CFR Web, there cannot be more than one CFR in the work in progress for a specific set of parameters, such as reporting period and submission type. Additionally, only one person can edit a CFR at a time. In this example, there is already a fiscal CFR established in the work in progress section for the 21-22 reporting period. Now, to electronically upload supporting documents, from the home page, select the Review and Revise CFRs, then select the reporting period here in the dashboard as we've looked at, and the DCN number of the supporting document you wish to submit for. To upload a document, select the type of document and choose the file to upload and click on the Upload button. Financial statements and parent agency allocations must still be uploaded. In the middle of the screen, select the desired radio button and checkbox if necessary of the document that you wish to submit. Note that consolidated financial statements show aggregated financial results for multiple entities or subsidiaries associated with a single parent company. Then browse to select the file to upload and a confirmation of, and once you click on the upload button, a confirmation will be displayed saying your upload has been successful. Now if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, in the dashboard section, there is an uploaded documents dropdown. By selecting this uploaded documents arrow, the dropdown will show a history of previously submitted documents. Note that this drop-down box will show the financial statement and other documents that have been uploaded. If you mail or email any supporting documents to the state agencies, they will not be recorded in the history here. Next, we will look at how to e-sign your certification pages. E-signing of the required certification schedules through CFR Web is now required for all New York State agencies. And in order to e-sign a certification schedule, a signatory role must be established. To e-sign the certification schedules, from the home page, I'm going to select this review and revise quadrant in the lower left, then select the reporting period and the DCN number for the certifications that you wish to e-sign. You will need to scroll down below the view and revise submission options. Below that, there is an e-signature dropdown. Once you expand that option, a list of the required certifications will appear along with their current status. A gold button under the actions column indicates the ability to e-sign. A gray button indicates that you do not have access to e-sign. First, we will go over the e-signing for the executive director. After selecting the certification schedule, in this case, we're looking at the CFRI, the signer must verify the data on the signature page. Any missing or incorrect data must be corrected. And after the data has been verified, selecting the attestation checkbox in the lower left will activate the e-signature button. I know it's a little difficult to see here, but you can see from the highlighted section that says by selecting checkbox is just to the left of that. You see now we've checked off the checkbox, and the e-signature button is now yellow and can be accessed. After clicking the e-signature button, the user will be returned to the previous screen with the status now updated, showing the date and time. Next, select the gold button to begin the process of signing the CFR III. To complete the CFR III, the following steps must be taken. Just as the executive director had with the CFRI, they must verify the data displayed and update as necessary. Select the attestation checkbox to activate the e-signature button, and then click on that button to sign the document. You can see here that the CFR III has now been signed and is shown as updated. It is now available for the county directors to add their signature to. Before we get to that, the executive director must also e-sign the CFR IV. As with the previous schedules, the same steps must be taken. Verify the data displayed and update as necessary. Select the attestation checkbox to activate the e-sign button, and then click on that button to sign the document. As we can see from here, the executive director has now satisfied their requirements for e-signing all their schedules. After the executive director has e-signed the CFR III, the county directors will now be able to e-sign. And please note that the county is not automatically notified that the III is available for them. Once you've done with it, and if you have a local contract requiring the county to e-sign, you must still notify them that you're finished with it and it's ready for them. And the county director will now have a gold button signifying that the III is ready for them. As you can see, we're now listed under the county director at Niagara County now has a gold button and they can sign it. And this is only available to them after the executive director at the agency has first signed. And the county director could now sign the III. To complete the process, the county will follow the same steps that the executive director had. They will click on the e-sign button, then select the attestation checkbox to activate the e-signature, and then click on the e-signature button to sign it. As you can see here, the county director for Niagara has satisfied their requirements for signing now, and the county director for Nassau County must still complete their process. But the same thing that Niagara did, Nassau will also have to do the exact same steps. The last certification we will look at here is the CFR II, your CPA, for your CPA. And the CPA will have a gold button available to them and will be able to e-sign their schedule at any time after the CFR has been submitted. With the III, the county director will not have the ability to e-sign until after the executive director has already e-signed. With the II, your CPA can e-sign at any time. It can be before or after the executive director has signed their schedules. And just like with the other schedules and the other signers, the same process is followed. Your CPA will click on the e-sign button, then select the attestation checkbox, and then click on the e-signature button in the middle of the bottom of your screen to sign the document. The CPA has now e-signed the II and satisfied their certification requirement. All certifications have now been e-signed. Now, previously e-signed certification schedules are available to view from the e-sign documents dropdown. When you're on the dashboard page, scroll all the way to the bottom, and the last options is the e-sign documents dropdown. Now, if you select that and click on the schedule under the View Download header, you can view the final document. This is a copy of the signed CFR-I that has been signed off has been e-signed by the executive director. You see below the name, it says electronically signed and gives the date and time that it was done. Now, the last quadrant we're going to look at here is the lower right section, which includes helpful links. The first option is under the CFR manual section, provides access to the CFR web home the SED website where you can access the CFR manuals and appendices and extension requests and transmittal letters. And the CFR training section provides access to CFR training updates at the OMH homepage. By clicking on the CFR training link, you will now see, it will bring you here. This is what the OMH homepage looks like. And it gives you access to links to the training videos for prior trainings on YouTube. It gives you access to review questions and answers from previous trainings, and also lists the contact info for the various state agencies. Now, this concludes my section on the CFR Web homepage. Thank you.
Hi, this is Paul Green from New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports. When you're in CFRS Web, you're going to use the menu feature to navigate around. It's up in the top left corner of the screen, and below it is a list of schedules to be completed. There's a gold line underneath the schedule that you're currently working on. Okay. Once you're done with that schedule, you can click on the previous schedule or next schedule buttons at the bottom of the screen. It's suggested that you follow this order of schedule preparation, but you can jump around. The only thing you have to consider is that there are some schedules that feed into other schedules. So if you jump around, you may not get the results until you go back and hit the feeder schedule. First one is the provider agency definition, which includes all this information right here. If you selected that you wanted to transfer the information from last year's CFR, then it'll all be filled in for you, okay? You'll notice there's some gray lines and there's some white lines. White lines are changeable. You can modify them just by clicking on it, deleting, and inputting. But the gray lines are non-enterable for one reason or another. In this particular case, agency code is already a prefixed line that cannot be changed. And lower down, certified financial statement, that gray line shows you that there's a drop-down box over to the right, which is necessary to make changes. The types of program, and then after you're done with the agency-specific definition, then you put in the program site definition. This is all the information that needs to be entered for the programs. Again, if you transferred the data from last year, then all your program sites are here. As Paul suggested, if you want to edit something, you click on the pencil. If you want to delete it, you click on the garbage can. And if you want to add a new one, you select add a new program. The only other thing that's on this screen is the DMH only programs, and we're going to talk about them later in the presentation. Once you're done with the programs, establishing the programs, then the next things are certification schedules. The IIIA or compliance review, III and IV. Again, this information is important and needs to be verified before you continue on. The contact information is the person who is the best to answer questions about CFR related issues. Also, the executive director's information is listed at the bottom. This is the person who's going to be signing the CFRI, the person responsible. The president/chair board of directors information is included on the CFRI. And then finally, the claims contact information. Generally, this is usually the fiscal contact person. So you can click the copy contact button, and this will put the fiscal contact information down as the claims contact information. CFRI is required for all CFR submissions. The CFRI must be e-signed by your executive director/CEO. A CFRI schedule e-signed by anyone other than the noted parties will not be accepted. So we've had a couple of cases where somebody other than the executive director signed this, and we did have to reject it. So the security manager at your agency should be careful not to hand out a user role to anybody but the correct person. The CFR IIA Accountant's Report. The CFR IIA includes the CPA name, address, and contact information. It also includes the CPA firm registration number, CPA firm registered with New York State Education Department through date, the last AICPA peer review acceptance date, and the AICPA member number. This information is all important and needs to be accurate. Please note, for the CPA firm registration, use the number assigned to the firm by the New York State Office of Professions within the New York State Education Department. New York State Education Law, Section 7401, includes sole proprietors. Therefore, a sole proprietor should also enter the assigned firm registration number. To determine if Schedule CFR IIA or Compliance Review or III or IV are required, refer to the CFR manual. And those completing the CFR IIA should review the Appendix AA of the CFR manual prior to signing. The CFR IIA is replacing the CFR II for the fiscal reporting period 24/5 and forward. It's required for most full CFRs. It must be completed by service providers whose fiscal year is the same or different from the CFR reporting period, and it should be e-signed by an independent certified public accountant, sole practitioner, partner of the CPA firm, or CPA firm that examined and certified the CFR. So counties and governmental entities have a second option. They can complete a compliance review. The instructions on the compliance review are in Appendix CC of the manual. This is a screenshot of the compliance review. It asks a series of questions. It asks that you have examined the CFR and compared it to a system that in place of maintaining the information. When you get done with the compliance review, the signature section is pretty much the same as a IIA. It includes all the CPA firm registration number and such. Again, this is just for governmental entities or counties. The CFR III is for not-for-profits that receive state aid or for-profits. There's the far left side, which is signed by the executive director for a not-for-profit. The middle section is signed by the highest ranking individual for a governmental entity. And then after either one of those two areas have been completed, it will be sent to the county director, who will sign the far right section. It's for providers that receive aid to localities funding or state aid, and especially through a local county contract. If funding through a direct contract, the executive director must e-sign the left side of a statement for voluntary local service providers. If funded through a local county contract, the left side of the certification must be e-signed, and the right side of the certification must be e-signed by the county director. Governmental entities have the middle section of the certification e-signed, and if it's then they would send it over to the county director for the right side to be e-signed. The final certification is a CFR IV, which is a list of questions to be answered: yes, no, or not applicable. For example, has your agency filed its most recently required federal tax form 990? The final question on it is SED service providers only, executive director or chief executive officer, have they completed the required annual online CFR training? Yes, no, or not applicable. It's used to report agency identifying data and serves as a certification statement by the service provider's chief executive officer attesting to the validity of the information contained in a document under the penalties prescribed in accordance with Article 175 of the New York State Penal Law, false written statements. The CFR IV is not required for governmental service providers or mini abbreviated CFRs. So we're going to take a 5-minute break now, and we're going to have to reload the presentation for the next section. So we will come back at about 11:25. Thank you.
I'm Ann Hoffman, and I will be presenting sections CFR 4, 4A, CFR 1 schedules. CFR 4 is a 2-tab data entry screen. The first tab is for program site, program administration, and/or LGU administration. The second tab is for agency administration. If you are completing the program site tab, select a state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. If you transfer data from a prior period, some rows may be pre-populated. If you wish to create a new row of data, select Add a Line. Next, select the desired position title code from the drop-down box. Then enter the standard work week, aggregate total hours paid, and amount paid for all individuals working in the specified position title code. Repeat the same steps for each additional position title code. CFRS Web will calculate the FTEs to 3 decimal places. To delete an entire row of data, click on the trash can icon located in the desired row. Oh, my thing is not working. If applicable, completion of the informational-only section is required. The total hours paid and total amount paid should include the amounts of overtime reported. The informational-only section includes overtime hours included in total hours paid, overtime amount included in total amount paid, average hourly rate, and annualized salary. The average hourly rate and annualized salary columns in the informational-only section will only appear in the software. Located at the far right of the screen is a total for the program site reporting for each position title code sharing the same standard work week. The column headers are as follows: total hours paid, full-time equivalent, and total amount paid. To complete the Agency Administration Personal Services, select the Agency Administration tab and follow the same process. Only 600 level position title codes are available for use. Only personal services related to employees of your agency are reported on this schedule. Individuals who receive W-2s are considered to be employees. The CFR 4 schedule is included in all CFR submission types. New York State agency-specific and shared program-specific CFR 4 schedules are prepared for staff providing program services. Agency administration staff is reported in a single column on a separate CFR 4 schedule. All agency administration staff is reported in this column regardless of the size of the New York State agency programs in relation to the total agency. Individuals receiving 1099 tax forms are considered to be independent contractors. Position title codes are listed in Appendix R. The positions are functional titles and may not match the corporate titles used by your agency. Position title codes may be specific to New York State agencies or program types. For example, position title code 211 will not be an option in the drop-down list for an OPWD program. There are 7 levels of position title codes. Direct care and clinical staff hours are a key component of the rate rationalization process for OPWDD. Please be sure to give your staff the appropriate position title codes. The standard work week must be at least 35 hours, but no more than 45 hours per week. Where applicable, employees' hours and salaries paid should be allocated between programs and/or position title codes. Calculation of FTEs. It is the hours paid divided by the standard work week times 52 weeks. For example, The FTE calculation for a position where the standard full-time work week is 35 hours per week and the employee worked 22.5 hours a week for 40 weeks during the fiscal year is 0.495. This example shows a calculation of the FTE and represents the most complicated calculation, a less than full-time employee who worked for less than a full year. CFARS Web does all the calculations for you. The totals of the CFAR 4 data carry forward to the CFAR 1, CFAR 3, and the DMH1 schedules. CFAR 4A, Contracted Direct Care and Clinical Personal Services. This schedule is used to report the amount paid to individuals and or organizations that have contracted with the service provider to provide direct care and or clinical personal services. All other contracted services must be reported on the appropriate expense line of the CFAR 1 or CFAR 3 schedule. It is the same data entry process as the CFAR 4 schedule, except the input of the standard work week is not required. Direct care hours, position title codes 200 to 299, and clinical hours, position title codes 300 to 399, are an important part of OPWD's rate rationalization formula. Be sure to report an accurate total for contracted hours on the CFAR 4A schedule. Only contracted direct care and clinical staff positions are reported on the schedule. Report hours paid and amount paid. The hours paid field cannot be left blank. Total contracted direct care and clinical personal services carries forward to CFAR 1, line 35. CFAR 4A is only included in full CFAR submission types. If contracted staff are not paid by the hour, an estimate of hours paid must be made. Entries of 0 or 1 hour will not generally be accepted. Questions regarding whether or not an individual is a contractor or an employee should be directed to the IRS, the service provider's accountant, and or tax attorney. CFAR 1, Program Site, Data, General Information. CFAR 1 is a 3-tab data entry screen: General Information, Expenses, and Revenues. To enter program site data, select a state agency, program, and site from the drop-down boxes. Gray fields are non-enterable. The data is populated from a different schedule or screen. Data on lines 1 through 6 and 8 carries forward from the program site definition screen. For Medicaid eligible programs, report both the Medicaid provider agreement number and the National Provider ID number. Both numbers should be associated with the program site being reported. CFAR 1 is only included in full CFAR submission types. CFAR 1 is a state agency specific, program site and or shared program specific schedule. Line 13, units of service. It is critical that units of service delivered during the reporting period are captured, counted, and reported accurately and correctly. Inaccurate units of service reported is cause for rejection of submitted CFRs. It is expected that providers will train staff regarding the appropriate measurement of units of service for the program types they operate. See appendices E, F, G, H, and HH. Ensure that information is recorded at the time the service is delivered, and make data available in the format of the CFR. OASIS programs. Units of service should be similar to those reported by the entity to the OASIS client data system through the monthly service delivery function, except when the reporting guidance varies. Refer to Appendix E for individual program CFR reporting requirements. OMH programs. OMH units of service carry forward from the OMH 1 schedule. There will be more on OMH 1 later in the presentation. The units of service reported are accrued based on the date of service and not the date of payment. All units of service provided must be reported, including those for which no payment was received. CFAR 1 line 13 has specific lines reporting various types of units of service as follows. 13A, Medicaid fee-for-service. 13B, Medicaid managed care. 13C, all other units of service. Refer to page 13.5 of the CFR manual for additional guidance. There are more expense lines that can be displayed on one screen. Use the scroll bar on the right side of the screen to access the lines not displayed. And remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Expense categories. The CFR 1 schedule has 7 expense categories. Line 16, personal services. The amount is carried forward from Schedule CFR 4. Line 17, vacation leave accruals. Report the increase or decrease in vacation accruals from the previous year. Line 18, mandated fringe benefits. Line 19, non-mandated fringe benefits. Line 22, repairs and maintenance. Includes costs for maintenance and minor repairs, as well as contracts for housekeeping, garbage, and snow removal. Line 26, participant incidentals. Includes costs associated with participant entertainment, recreation, summer camps, clothing, etc. Line 28, expense equipment. It's expense equipment with a value of less than $5,000 each or a useful life of less than 2 years. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for more information regarding how equipment is reported on the CFR. Line 35, contracted direct care and clinical personal services. The amount is carried forward from Schedule CFR 4A. Line 36, supplies and materials non-household. Includes costs for program supplies, medical supplies, printing, copying, postage, computer software, etc. Line 39, general insurance. The insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional and medical malpractice, vehicle or other insurance costs related to the program site and program administration. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. The OTPS, equipment, and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. Data input for lines with a line detail box icon can only be entered by clicking on the icon to the right of the line. Line detail boxes are customized to meet specific New York State agency needs with predefined item descriptions. Additional item descriptions can be added by clicking Add a Line and typing in the new description. Be specific in your description. Data entered in the line detail box is totaled, and the details are shown on the worksheet details section of the CFR. Do not report items on line 40 OTPS other that should be reported on a specifically defined line. Following are 2 examples of items reported on CFR 1940, which should have been reported on predefined lines. Printing costs of $1,227 should be reported on line 36, supplies and materials non-household. Rubbish removal costs of $3,999 should be reported on line 22, repairs and maintenance. Bad debt expense and/or credit losses should be reported on the appropriate schedule as follows. CFR 1940 and adjusted out is not allowable on line 66. CFR 2, column 9, line 4, and adjusted out is non-allowable on line 8. CFR 3, line 17, and adjusted out is not allowable on line 41. Refer to the FAQ on page 8.13 of the CFR manual for further guidance. Certain assets are depreciated: vehicle, equipment, building and/or land improvements. All items with an individual cost of $5,000 or more and a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. Refer to Appendix O of the CFR manual for guidance on capitalization and depreciation. Group purchase of like items should be treated as a single purchase. Group purchases of unlike items should be treated as if each item was purchased individually. Telephone systems and computer systems should be treated as a group purchase. Adjustments and non-allowable costs. Line 66. Enter the description, line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported on any line of the CFR 1 schedule in the line detail box. Negative numbers cannot be entered in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual cost or fair market value for related party transactions disclosed on CFR 5 as an adjustment on CFR 1, line 66. In the line detail box, the line number refers to where the individual expense is originally reported and is being adjusted out as non-allowable on line 66. If line 16, personal services, is referenced, report the Appendix R 3-digit position title code associated with the non-allowable personal service cost after a tilde sign in the description field. For example, severance, tilde, position title code 201. OPWD only informational lines F and G are for reporting phase 1 of the workforce stabilization, and lines H and I are for reporting phase 2 of the workforce stabilization. Line 68A, B, D, E, F, G, H, and I will be discussed during the OPWD HC specific section. CFR 1 revenues. Remember, expenses and revenues are reported on the accrual basis of accounting. Line 69, participant fees. Report revenues received from program participants in excess of SSI and SSA. Line 72A, Medicaid fee for service. Line 72B, Medicaid managed care. Line 74, other third parties. This is usually insurance, like private health insurance. Line 79, federal grants. Report grant revenues received directly from an administering federal government agency in support of the service providers programs. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: U.S. Department of Agriculture, Education, Health and Human Services, Justice, and Labor. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development is for OASIS only. Do not include federal grant revenue received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and DOH as aid to localities funding. For the Paycheck Protection Program, report only the amount of the PPP loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt. Additional lines are available by use of the Add a Line button in CFRS Web. Line 80, state grants. Report grant revenues received from New York State agencies other than the CFR reporting agencies. CFRS Web includes the following predefined entries: New York State Department of Health, Labor, Transportation, New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, Housing and Community Renewal, Parole, and Veterans Affairs, and the New York State Office of Children and Family Services. This does not include monies received from OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and or SCD, and does not include aid to localities funding received from OASIS, OMH, and or OPWD. Instead, those monies would be reported as net deficit funding on line 93. Line 82, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Report food-related revenues. This is for OASIS and OPWD programs only. Line 83, gifts, legacies, bequests, donations. Report the monetary contribution revenue received from gifts, legacies, bequests, and donations. Non-monetary donations and/or contributions are reported as reconciling items on the reconciliation if the schedule is required. Please see the FAQ section of the CFR manual for additional guidance. Line 86, prior period rate adjustments. Report the revenue from rate appeals, rate adjustments, or retroactive contingency contracts. Do not include net deficit funding amounts on this line. For SED, report any reconciliation adjustments from a prior period, including any reconciliation tuition adjustments included as part of the prospective tuition rate. This line is not applicable for OASIS OMH service providers. OPWD, Medicaid recovery should also be reported on this line. Lines 93 and 103, net deficit funding. This is state and LGU funding only. The amount of net deficit funding reported on line 93 is determined by one or more of the following methods. Monies received directly from New York State through a direct contract with the state. Monies received from the LGU, these are county and state funds, through a contract between the LGU and the service provider. Do not include the provider share, the voluntary contribution, in this amount. Line 94, other revenue. Some examples include, for OASIS, closely allied entity revenue or opioid settlement funds. OMH, safety net payments, vital access providers Medicaid revenue, and for OPWD, assistive supports revenue, revenue for non-Medicaid eligible individuals under predefined OPWD state paid. The revenues, GAAP adjustments to revenues, and non-GAAP adjustments to revenues categories each have another line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items of $1,000 or more. Individual items less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each. This concludes the CFR 1 section of the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Turnbow, and I'm representing State Education Department. Today, I'll be presenting the CFR2, CFR2A, and the CFR3. The CFR2 is the agency fiscal summary. It captures the expenses and revenues for the entire agency. It is required for full and abbreviated CFRs only, so it will not be required for Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. This is an agency-wide schedule, and you can find it in page 41 of the CFR sample we provided. Here you'll see a screenshot of the CFR2 as it is in the CFRS web. Only column 9 is enterable. All the totals for each New York State agency are displayed in separate columns. And any agency's activities not inclusive of state programs are to be reported in column 9. Data for columns 2 through 8 carry forward from the DMH1, and column 1 is calculated by the CFRS web. So again, only column 9 is enterable. Column 1, lines 7, 9, and 10 should match the respective categories in your financial statements. If there's a discrepancy between the CFR2 and your financial statements, it should be explained through the input on the reconciliation page, which will be explained later. Also reported in column 9 are expenses and revenues relating to fundraising and special events. Please note, fundraising and fundraising special events are not considered agency administration expenses and cannot be reported on the CFR3. They are to be reported here on the CFR2. You will also report realized and unrealized gains and losses, management services expenses provided to another provider agency on an ongoing basis. The provider agency totals reported in column 1 will be compared to your financial statement totals. If the reporting periods are the same, any discrepancies will need to be explained in the reconciliation. It is expected that the CFR reporting of fundraising and special events will match the reporting in your agency's financial statements. Operating expenses reported on CFR2 are used to distribute agency administration expenses between the CFR reporting programs. Operating expenses include personal services, vacation leave, accruals, fringe benefits, and OTPS, less raw materials. The reconciliation. The reconciliation schedule is not required and/or not available if the CFR reporting period and the financial statement period are different. Governmental entities, Article 28 abbreviated and mini abbreviated CFR filers are also not required to complete the reconciliation. If a reconciliation schedule is required, it must be completed to pass your validation. For a required reconciliation, the amount calculated as the, quote, difference in the worksheet should be less than $100 in order to pass this validation. Please refer to page 110 of the CFR sample. In the CFRS, you will report the sum of total expenses and total losses as reported in the financial statements. Using the additions and subtractions drop-down detail boxes, report the expenses and losses included in the CFR2 that were not included in the financial statements. Common reconciling items may be reported as additions or subtractions in the reconciliation schedule, such as elimination of intercompany expenses and revenues, depreciation differences, and any other item differences between the financial statements and the CFR that are not reported as adjustments and/or non-allowable costs on CFR 1 or CFR 3. A description should be added with any items reported here. You will also find rounding here, where the remaining difference between expenses reported on the financial statements and the CFR should be reported. The CFR 2A. The CFR 2A schedule must be completed by all not-for-profit and proprietary providers when financial statements are required to be submitted. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated filers, mini abbreviated filers, and governmental entities. This schedule is used to report data from your financial statements that were submitted in accordance with sections 2 and 6, and also data from the underlying year-end adjusted accounting records that support these financial statements. The purpose of the schedule is to collect data in a uniform way in order for each state agency to have it readily available for provider-specific fiscal analysis as well as industry-wide statistics. Instructions for completing Schedule CFR 2A can be found in section 14 of the CFR manual, and you could see a sample of it on pages 42 through 44. Here's a screenshot of what the CFR 2A will look like in the CFRS web. And here's the rest of it. On the last slide, you'll see COVID-19 right here, line 35. Here you'll report the total amount of revenue and gains on the extinguishment of debt recorded in the CFR reporting period that was attributable to COVID-19 funding, grants, loan forgiveness, contributions and/or donations, awards and/or tax credits. Include in total revenue and gains the COVID-19 grants awarded from federal and/or state agency, counties, and private foundations, the amount of the Paycheck Protection Program loan that was forgiven and recorded as revenue or as a gain on the extinguishment of debt, the COVID-19 federal tax credits that were recorded as revenue, and lastly, donations received as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Please report the total revenue and gains on an accrual basis of accounting. The CFR 3, Agency Administration. Agency administration consists of the costs associated with the overall direction of the agency, general record keeping and financial management, governing board activities, and public relations. Direct identification of specific expenses is the preferred method for charging expenses to various functions. Further, indirect costs are those activities or services that benefit more than one project or activity and may require to be allocated. In this case, the allocation method must be reasonable, consistent, and reviewed by management. Some examples include time studies, square footage, actual use, and percentage of direct cost. Note, proper documentation should be retained regarding the methods used. Providers should consult the CFR manual appendices I and K for this information. Full CFR filers report the agency administration costs for the entire provider agency on a single CFR 3 schedule. Abbreviated CFR filers complete the agency administration worksheet in lieu of a CFR 3. You can find a sample of the CFR 3 on pages 45 through 46, and this is also an agency-wide schedule. CFR 3 is a 3-tab data entry screen within the CFRS. You have personal services, fringe benefits, and OTPS. Then you have equipment and property, and lastly, the ratio value tab. This is lines 10 through 18 of the tab we were just looking at. Well, the first tab, which is the personal services, fringe benefits, OTPS, equipment, property, and ratio value. CFR 3 expense categories. You have personal services, vacation leave accruals, fringe benefits, OTPS, equipment, property, and parent agency administration allocation. Remember, fundraising and fundraising special events costs are not to be reported on the CFR 3. Again, they are to be reported in full on the CFR 2 in column 9. Please also note, if parent agency administration allocation is reported on line 38 of the CFR 3, documentation of the administration allocation must be submitted. This must include total parent agency costs, total allocated costs to each of the subordinate agencies, and the basis used for the allocation. Section 15 of the CFR manual provides additional guidance on reporting parent agency administration allocation on CFR 3, line 38. Line 6 of the CFR 3, audit legal accounting, includes the cost of other accounting services such as payroll services and CFR examination costs. Line 14, contracted personal services such as management, consulting services, IT support, things like that. Items with a cost in excess of $5,000 must be listed in the line detail box separately by description and amount. Items costing less than $5,000 each may be aggregated and listed as all items less than $5,000. The cost to develop internal use software during the application development stage are capitalized and not included on this line. Refer to U.S. GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards topic 350-40, internal use software, for those specifications. Also refer to U.S. GAAP Codification of Accounting Standards topic 350-50 for the website development costs. And what I just read will be included in your notes on these slides, guys. So. Line 16, general insurance. Insurance costs for general liability, bonding, professional malpractice, vehicle, or other insurance costs related to agency administration will be reported on this line. Do not report insurance expenses related to equipment or property on this line. There'll be a separate tab for that. Here's a screenshot of what your equipment and property tab will look like in the CFRS. Sorry, guys. Other lines. The OTPS equipment and property categories each have an other line for miscellaneous items. Information is entered through a line detail box. Detail is required for individual items costing $1,000 or more. Individual items costing less than $1,000 each may be grouped together as all items less than $1,000 each on these lines. Note, if the total of the grouped items is excessive, you may be asked for a detailed breakdown. Line 41, adjustments and non-allowable costs. On this line, you'll enter the description, the line number, and amount of all non-allowable expenses reported in any line of the CFR 3 in the line detail box. Refer to Appendix X for some, but not all, non-allowable costs. Report the amount in excess of actual costs or fair market value for all administrative related party transactions disclosed on the CFR 5. The amounts entered must be greater than or equal to 0. Line 42 is the net agency administration, and it's the amount to be allocated using the ratio value method. CFR 3 ratio value allocation. The total corporate agency administration expenses are allocated to all agency funding sources using the ratio value method. The ratio value method uses operating costs of the program sites as the basis of the allocation. Operating costs are defined as personal services, vacation, leave accruals, fringe benefits, and OTPS less raw materials. Schedule CFR 3 uses a two-step process to allocate agency administration costs. CFRS Web will complete all these calculations for you. Step 1, the total corporate agency administration expenses from CFR 3, line 42, are allocated to each funding New York State agency. Operating costs for program code 0880 and 0890 are excluded from this ratio value calculation. Step 1 of the calculation takes the total agency operating costs that are carried forward from CFR 2, columns 2 through 9, to CFR 3, lines 43 through 50, and they are totaled on line 51. Then line 51 is carried forward to line 53. Net agency administration is carried forward from CFR 3, lines 42 to CFR 3, line 52. Line 52 is divided by line 53 to develop the 6-digit ratio value factor on line 54. The ratio value factor is applied to the operating costs on CFR 3, lines 43 through 50 to calculate each funding source's share of agency administration costs, and the allocation is then displayed on lines 55 through 62, which you'll see here. These calculated values are carried forward to CFR 1, CFR 2, and DMH 1. Step 2 of the ratio value allocation is performed in the state agency level, exempting additional New York State agency specific programs. A list of the program codes not included in the step 2 calculation can be found in section 15 of the CFR manual. The second step of the ratio value allocation is done within the New York State agency shares assigned in step 1, allowing additional specified program types to be exempted. The adjusted ratio value factors are displayed on lines 71 through 77. This is after the step 2. This is the agency admin worksheet for abbreviated filers. Please note that we do not have a sample of this in the CFR that was provided. Here, agency administration must be calculated using the ratio value method as well. You enter the total agency administration expenses on line 8, and then the CFRS web does everything else. All agencies have agency administration expenses. Agency administration expenses need to be distributed to all activities fairly. And the ratio value is the required method used to allocate agency administration expenses on the core reports. Ratio value is based on operating costs. In calculating expected administrative and overhead expenses, hospitals should use the most recent available allocation percentages from the step-down derived from the latest institutional cost report for the period submitted to the Department of Health. Final thoughts. For more information on the CFR3 schedule, please see Section 15 of the CFR manual. For more information on agency administration in general, please see Appendix I, Section 42 of the CFR manual. And lastly, please refer to Appendix T, Section 53 for more information on how to calculate agency administration on an abbreviated CFR. This will conclude my portion of this presentation. Thank you.
This is Ann Hoffman with the Office of Mental Health, and I will be presenting CFR 5, Transactions with Related Organizations and Individuals. The CFR 5 schedule is required for submission with full, abbreviated, and mini abbreviated CFRs. It is not required for Article 28 abbreviated CFRs. The CFR 5 schedule is used to report all transactions, including compensation, between the reporting entity, its affiliates, principal owners, management and members of their immediate families, and any other party, including an organization, with which the reporting entity may deal when one party has the ability to significantly influence management or operating policies of the other to the extent that one of the transacting parties might be prevented from fully pursuing its own separate interests. For OASIS and OPW service providers, for the purposes of this schedule, related organizations and/or individuals shall include closely allied entities as described and defined in Article 25.06 of Mental Hygiene Law. OASIS providers are also directed to refer to the administrative and fiscal guidelines for OASIS-funded providers. Accounting standards require disclosure in the financial statements for some of these transactions. Additional guidance is available in Section 18 of the CFR manual. Section A has two questions. Question 1 pertains to payments related to payments to related organizations or individuals. Question 2 pertains to transactions regarding financial aid and/or assistance. If both questions are answered no, you are finished with the CFR 5 schedule and should proceed to the CFR 6 schedule. If the answer to question 1 is yes for OASIS, OMH, OPWD, SED, and DOH providers, you must complete Section B and possibly Section C. If the answer to question 2 is yes for OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and DOH providers, you must complete Section D. Section B, Column 3 is a drop-down box. Select the 3 most affected programs and/or sites. Column 6 is a drop-down box. Select the appropriate relationship. For rent and/or lease transactions, Column 8 is determined from the completion of Section C. Column 9 is automatically calculated. For any lease and/or rental agreement reported in Section B, actual costs to the related party must be detailed in Section C. Only the lesser of actual costs or fair market value are allowable costs for reimbursement in Section B. In Section C, columns 4, 5, 6, and 7 need to be completed. All other expenses may be listed in column 8, Other. Costs in column 8 must be discretely defined through a line detail box. Column 9 is a calculated field. This total needs to be manually entered in column 8 in Section B. Section B, column 9. Adjustments to allowable costs must be reported on CFR 1, line 66, CFR 3, line 41, and DMH 1, line 13. Negative adjustments are not carried forward. This is a screenshot of a $1,000 adjustment to allowable costs from CFR 5, Section B, that is entered on CFR 1, line 66. If question 2 is answered yes, OASIS, OMH, OPWD, and DOH providers must enter the required data in Section D. The direction of related party transactions are indicated in column 7A, funding to, or 7B, funding from. The associated dollar amounts of the related party transactions are indicated in column 8. This concludes the CFR 5 section of the presentation.
Hello, my name is Nicole from DOH, and I will be presenting the CFR 6 and DMH 1 sections. We'll start with CFR 6, Governing Board and Compensation Summary. The CFR 6 schedule is to be completed by service providers funded by all CFR reporting agencies. This schedule is used to report compensation provided to the governing board members, all employees reported under position title codes 601, 602, and 603, all individuals operating under a contract with a separate, related or unrelated entity that would normally fall under title codes 601, 602, and 603 position responsibilities, employees earning more than $150,000 per year in annualized salary and contracted payments, the 5 highest paid independent contractors earning more than $50,000 per year. Please see page 65 through 67 of the sample CFR. The CFR 6 schedule is required for submission with full and abbreviated CFRs and not required for submission with Article 28 abbreviated or mini abbreviated CFRs. Section 1 asks if any employees of your agency also serve on the governing authority. This must be answered yes or no. And if answered yes, CFRS Web will provide a line detail box to enter the names. Please note, Section 1 defaults to no. If answered yes, identify the employees. This does not include the president, executive director, or CEO as a non-voting member attending board meetings. And here we can see the data for Section 1 is entered through the line detail box. If yes is selected in the dropdown, you must select Add a Line to complete this section. Section 2 asks for the listing of names of all individuals who receive compensation as board officers, member of the board of directors, or board of trustees. Only include compensation paid to individuals in their capacity as officers, directors, or trustees of your agency's board of directors. If the answer to Section 2 is yes, identify the board members. Note that compensation does not include reimbursement of travel expenses or meal stipends. And here you can see the following example for Section 2. For fringe benefits, report the amounts paid for employment benefits, for example, health insurance, and received by all classes and categories of employees. Next, you can see other benefits where you can also enter details. This is where you would report the cash value of awards, rewards, loans, or other benefits made in lieu of or in addition to monetary compensation or regular fringe benefits. And at the very right, you could see total compensation. This is where you would include salary, contracted payment amount, regular fringe benefits, and other benefits. Please note reimbursement does not meet the definition of compensation. Section 3 requests information on the highest paid employees of your agency. In this section, report all employees reported under position title codes 601, 602, and 603, regardless of their total annualized salaries. All employees and individuals that received a total annualized salary and/or contracted payment amount in column 9 in excess of $150,000. Also, all individuals operating under a contract with a separate, related, or unrelated entity that performed duties that would normally fall under Title Codes 601, 602, and 603. Annualized salary is the result of the amount paid for the performance and completion of regular services. For example, managerial, administrative, professional, direct care, support, or other services, divided by the FTE. If the FTE is greater than 1, the amount paid divided by 1 is calculated. For example, if an employee earned $44,000 in the last 4 months of the reporting period, to annualize the person's income, multiply 44,000 by 12 divided by 4 to equal $132,000. Please note the CFR 6 Section 3 columns 1 through 8 can be imported from a text file. And here we see an example of Section 3 that we just talked about. In this example, Mary Reynolds received $1,200 in compensation for car expenses. You can see that in line number 1, that were non-allowable. This is an example of an expense which is not available to all employees and needs to be manually adjusted out of the CFR 3, line 41. This is an example of a non-allowable cost reported on Section 3 of the CFR 6. This is where we would make the adjustment for non-allowable expenses from the CFR 6 to the CFR 3, line 41. So here you could see in the description, you see M. Reynolds auto lease, and the value $1,200 there. The description of value must be assigned here. Section 4 requests information on the 5 highest paid independent contractors providing any type of service to the provider agency. There are predefined items for services of a professional nature, including accounting, legal, medical, consulting, and other. If these descriptions do not fit the service type, additional types of service can be added to the line detail box. The threshold for Section 4 is $50,000. Independent contractors may be individuals or firms. This is an example of Section 4. And to add a section, you would click the Add a Line at the bottom left-hand corner. You would also select the type of service in the drop-down and report total amount paid during the reporting period in the far right where it says amount paid. This concludes the CFR 6. We will now move on to the DMH1. In full CFRs, the DMH1 is automatically created from the entries on the core schedules. No direct entry is possible. In abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated CFRs, the DMH1 data must be manually entered on the DMH1. DMH1 is not applicable to many abbreviated CFRs and providers reporting only SED and DOH programs. For a full CFR filer, fiscal information can be reported by either program type or program site. CFRS Web uses the program type and index code combination to determine whether to aggregate the sites or not. If multiple occurrences of a program type have the same index code, the data for that program type will be aggregated into a single column on the DMH1. If multiple occurrences of a program type have different index codes, the data for the program code with the unique index code will be reported in its own column on the DMH1. The DMH1 is completed on the full accrual basis of accounting. Equipment costing $5,000 or more and having a useful life of 2 or more years must be depreciated. Agency administration is distributed between New York State agencies and their programs using the ratio value allocation methodology for full and abbreviated CFR submission types. Pictured here is the DMH1 in CFRS Webs. And this also correlates with pages 68 through 75 of the sample CFR. The DMH1 is a 3-tab data entry screen where at the top of the page, you can see those 3 tabs for entering data, and those include program units of service and expenses, program revenues, and program adjustments to revenues. Only abbreviated and Article 28 abbreviated submission types directly enter data into the DMH1. Abbreviated, Article 28 abbreviated, and full CFRs, directions for that include CFR4 data will be transferred to the Personal Services line by CFRS Web. And just to note, the data is transferred from the CFR1, which is where it's grayed out. Any other revenue items over $1,000 each on lines 30, 34, and 40 must be detailed. CFRS Web provides line detail boxes to enter this data. Line detail boxes are also provided for the following types of revenue: line 25 federal grants and line 26 state grants. Please note CFRS Web includes several predefined entries. Do not include federal grant revenue received from OASIS, OMH, OPWDD, and DOH as aid to localities funding. Additional lines are available by use of the Add a Line button in CFRS Webs. Please see the following example showing revenues on the DMH1 for sections lines 15 through 31. It is recommended to use the Transfer to DMH2 button as a starting point for claim creation. And you can see that in the bottom left-hand corner. The data can then be manually adjusted if desired. And here we are showing the Transfer to DMH2 button. This is the last section tab where gap adjustments to revenue lines 32 through 36 are at the top, and then non-gap adjustments to revenue lines 37 through 44 are on the bottom. And this concludes the DMH1 section. I will now pass the presentation on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Hi, this is Emily Bryans again from OPWDD. So this screen shown here is the CFRS Web User Guide, which can be a helpful tool if you're having any trouble or have any questions regarding the completion of the CFR in CFRS Web. To access the help guide, you can click on the menu icon on the upper left of the screen and then scroll down and click on the help icon. A PDF file will open up in a separate tab. Or you can click on the help icon next to the schedule name. The icon looks like a question mark. And then a PDF file specific to that schedule will open up in a separate tab. This concludes today's CFR presentation for session 1. Thank you for joining and have a great day.